Cost segregation. It's one of those terms I see get thrown around all over the internet, especially in real estate and the tax planning world. Matter of fact, they've got courses now to teach CPAs to do cost segregation. And a lot of people have heard about it, but very few actually understand what it is and how it works. And honestly, I was one of them. And so that's exactly why I'm excited about today's conversation. I'm joined by Mark Santiago, founder and CEO of SegPro Solutions, a firm that specializes in cost segregation and a multitude of other energy deductions and credits. But we won't get into that today. We're specifically talking about cost segregation. And Mark has helped multiple property owners across the country uncover tax savings that they didn't even know existed. So if you have ever wondered whether cost segregation is legit, overhyped, or actually worth looking into, this interview is for you. And so with all of that said, let's get into this. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning.
How are you this morning?
Doing great. It's great to be here with you, Mike.
Yeah, I appreciate the time. Like I said, I just want to let everybody know I had a conversation with a CPA out in Florida, and he actually challenged me on what cost segregation was. And to be honest with you, Mark, I had, other than knowing it was with real estate,
right,
I had no idea. And I think this is one of the beauties of having, one, connections on LinkedIn, and two, the National Referral Network, which we'll get into. But just having resources like you to have on these interviews so that I can learn what cost segregation is, and then obviously people that don't know. So let's jump into this simple question. What is cost segregation, Mark?
Okay, well, this is something near and dear to my heart. So cost segregation, think of it in terms of commercial real estate tax strategies. So in a typical commercial building, you're going to depreciate it over 27 and a half years if it's residential related, or 39 years if it's like a commercial, like a dental office or an office building. Cost segregation simply goes into those buildings and breaks down the assets into short-lived versus long-lived assets, into 5-year, 7-year, 15-year, which then you can imagine that accelerates the depreciation, which then offsets income and reduces your tax liability. So in a nutshell, that's it.
So interview over. Thanks. No. So let me get this straight, Mark. So you have, which I didn't even know that you could do depreciation schedules for that long. So 39 years for a commercial building.
Yeah.
And so just so I'm getting this straight here, cost segregation allows you to depreciate that over a shorter window of time.
That's exactly right. And the funny thing is, this is the IRS approved methodology for depreciation. They don't want you to do the 39 years. For some reason, that's the default that people go to when they first set up an asset. But the IRS has set up cost segregation with the asset classes, the makers depreciation asset classes. They've set those up 5-year, 7-year, 15-year lives. So think about it. When you walk into a building, the walls, certain aspects of that building are going to last for 39 years, but a lot of the things inside of there are not going to last. Your carpets, your decorative wall, your lights, lighting fixtures, specialty electric and plumbing, those are just not going to last for 39 years. And so you go in and you identify those and say, okay, those are 5-year assets based on the IRS classifications. These are 7-year assets. Some of the stuff on the outside, like sidewalks and driveways and landscaping, can be 15-year assets. So logically, when you start thinking about it, cost segregation makes all the sense in the world when you just look at a building and what's inside of it.
And this is another reason why I love these conversations, Mark, is I've written about this on social media. We've talked about it on these interviews. There is no such thing as a tax loophole. Either you know the rules, you know the tax code, and you play within those rules, or you don't.
100%. Well said.
And I love that. So you mentioned dental offices, you mentioned commercial, but let's be clear. What types of properties are best suited for cost segregation?
So this is another misconception, right? People, they think of commercial building and they only think of like an office building or potentially a dental office or a convenience store. But There's also a category of residential properties that are commercial properties. So
Okay.
think of commercial in terms of any income producing property is eligible for a cost segregation study.
So
So
just a rent, like just a rental property, Airbnb.
an Airbnb would be a short-term rental, which are super beneficial within the cost seg, and we'll get into that. If you buy a second home and you rent it out, if you rent out your basement and it's a separate dwelling, those are all commercial properties, even though they're residential in nature. And then, of course, you've got the whole range of gas stations, RV resorts, dental office, a medical building, an office building, a car wash, all of those, a restaurant. Those are all commercial buildings that qualify for a cost segregation study.
Now, I understand that every building, every situation is unique in and of itself, but could you share an example of how a cost segregation has impacted a property owner and their financial outcome?
Yeah, so we've done the whole breadth of cost segregation studies. One that comes to mind is a new office building, a 4-story building here in Salt Lake City where I live. So we did 6 different cost seg studies on this one building. We had the core and shell, right, the main structure of the building, but then within that building, each of the tenants, there was a surgery center, a spa, a financial planning office. Each of them had spent around $5 million on tenant improvements to make their portion of that building unique to them. Okay, and so within there, you have 5 different tenants that had spent that around that $5 million. Then you had the main core and shell. So in each of those cases, it was between 25 and 30% of the depreciable basis of their portion that they saved in the first year on their taxes. So
So Mark, there's the cost segregation,
right.
and then within a cost segregation, because I've heard this term before, the studies. And if I heard you correctly, within the cost segregation, there are different layers, which are different studies. Am I hearing you correctly there?
Well, it's one study, but there's multiple steps within that study.
Okay. And so what are those steps?
Yeah, let's talk through those steps. So the first thing is we're always going to provide the building owner and the CPA an estimate of the benefit they can get by doing a cost segregation study. So we'll ask them for simple data points like, when was the asset placed in service, the building? What's the address? And do you have an existing depreciation schedule? So basically with those main basic points, and also what type of building it is, we then give an estimate of benefit. And then we always circle with the CPA. Like people sometimes think that the cost seg providers are going to like peel out the CPA.
No.
We
Right.
form this triangle between CPA, ourselves, and the building owner. So then we have a conversation and say, okay, here's the opportunity. If it's $1 million building, the building owner can save $250K in depreciation in year one. A 30% tax bracket, you're talking, what's that, $80,000 or something?
A significant amount of money.
Yeah. But sometimes the building owner has other losses or other offsetting expenses that don't make that cost seg appropriate at the time, right? And so we'll say, okay, let's push pause. Let's look at this later in 2025 on that tax return rather than 2024. So we do the estimate of benefit. Then we meet with the CPA and say, okay, does this make sense for the building owner? And then we gather a few more data points like an appraisal, all the costs if it's a build, all the cost apps. Get as much data as we can around the building, the land value versus the depreciable part of the building. And then the big step is when we go in and do the study itself, right? And that's when we use our engineering and contractor skills to understand kind of how the building was built. And as you know, Mike, like every building is different and unique, which makes it fun. This is fun part of my job is each building is so unique. So we go in there with our engineers and we look at the different structure of the building, what's unique to that building. Maybe there's some unique plumbing, electrical work. There's a lot of the aesthetics to the building that make it unique and beautiful inside. A lot of those are short-lived assets. So that's the big part. That's that on-site visit where we really break down the assets of the building into those categories. And then we'll come back, use our software system that has done over 10,000 reports in this system. So it's basically seen everything, right? And we'll use that then to tweak around the edges and make sure we refine that study. It's usually about a 60 to 70 page output and has new depreciation schedules that the CPA will then put into the tax return. So once we're done, then we sit down with the CPA, the building owner again, that triangle, talk through the results, and basically hand over to the CPA everything that he or she needs to then put in the tax return and move forward with that benefit.
So, Mark, one of the things that I want to emphasize here is that triangle that you mentioned. And so many professionals that we talk to on this show, I guess, they work alongside CPAs.
Yes.
This is a hand in glove type situation. So many professionals are not there to steal the CPA's clients. So,
Yeah.
Mark, why is it so difficult for professionals like you to work with CPAs and create that paradigm shift that you're not there to steal the client, you're there to create more value? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's it comes with building a relationship and building trust. We help them see that we're there to make them look good, right? And once that relationship of trust is established, it seems to bring down the barriers. There's also opportunities. These CPAs are super busy, especially at these tax filing deadline times, and so many times what I've experienced is they can't slow down from what they're doing to take a step back and say, hey, let me have someone help me. But it just takes one time. It just takes one time to say, hey, we're going to make you look so good. We're going to make you look even more sticky to that client because we're going to provide something that's going to be of significant value to them. And they're going to see that coming from you, not necessarily from SegPro Solutions. They're going to see it coming from, Tanner CPA firm or whatever it may be. And so it's all about relationships and building that relationship of trust from the beginning, and then letting them see that we're about helping them shine.
Okay. I mean, I could have that conversation for a long time, Mark, but so I see a lot of people online. They're, there's a group right now they sell a course on teaching CPAs to be, tax specialists versus as tax preparers. And the thing is that basically tell your client to go buy a commercial building or go buy something or buy a property and do cost segregation. How do you determine if a property will benefit from such a study if I just bought it today?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it depends on the personal tax situation of the building owner.
Okay.
Right. So we always start with that and say, okay, where are you at in terms of, do you have a large tax liability? Do you have some net operating losses that are already rolling forward that make a cost seg study not necessary right now? So we really try to, with the CPA, kind of peel back the layers and say, okay, are they in a tax deficit, meaning they owe a significant amount of tax? Once that's determined, then we say, okay, buying a commercial building is a great step, and a cost segregation is going to help you. Then we can look at the types of buildings to purchase, right? And what we're seeing is there's a lot of niche investors that'll go, for example, we have some clients they go up and buy gas stations across the country. That's their niche. We have others that are buying multifamily apartment buildings, for example. Family offices, like for investments, right? What we're seeing them do is buy a lot of duplexes and fourplexes. And even on an individual family basis, you'll see now, because real estate has gotten so expensive, like I don't know how our kids can afford, to buy a home, for example. Right. And so we're seeing this strategy of parents helping their children buy a duplex live in part of it, rent out the other part of it, and do a cost seg on the part that's being rented out. So again, we start with the personal tax situation of the building owner, of the individual. Then we look at, okay, what types of real estate do you enjoy? Like, do you want to own a gas station? Do you want to own a convenience store? Do you want to own real estate? Residential real estate. And then again, all of those are going to qualify for a cost seg study. And so encouraging them to take the step and to go and invest is probably the next big step there.
So what are some of the risks, Mark? I mean, look, if my understanding is that if you have a 39-year depreciation schedule and you condense it down to 7, what is the risk like if you sell it year 8 at the the market value in relation to the deduction or the schedule the depreciation schedule? Is there any risk to doing that?
So yeah, there are some risks. I'm glad you're bringing that up because it's not all just grins and giggles when you get into cost segregation. There's obviously risk. So let me talk about a few of those. The one you just brought up is interesting, and that is, if I accelerate now all this depreciation and I sell this building in 4 years or 5 years or 7 years, am I going to have to now pay back all of that benefit that I just received? And the answer is it depends, right? We always say, do a cost seg study if you're going to hold that property for 3 years or longer, because the IRS does what's called depreciation recapture. So if you were to, buy a building, do a cost seg study, get all that big year 1 benefit, and then sell it next year, well, the IRS with that depreciation recapture is going to get they're going to get their benefit back, right? And then they've set that up so that you can't just trick. That would be a loophole, as you talked about earlier, right?
Okay.
And kind of doing a tricky move, and so that the IRS doesn't allow that. They're going to get their benefit back through this depreciation recapture. But if you're going to hold it for 3 years or longer, you're going to benefit from the cost seg study, even though there will be some depreciation recapture. Part of the reason is as you sell that property, you get to do a disposition study and say, okay, of that sell price, I get to allocate so much to the 5-year assets, so much to the 7, so much to the 39. And each of those have different tax brackets.
Okay.
So it is a risk, but as long as you hold it for 3 years or longer, that risk really is insignificant.
And is that part of the initial study that you do with clients to kind of look at, hey, if you do this, here's what this kind of 3, 5, 7-year plan's like. And if you sell it year 3, 5, 7, whatever the case is, this is going to be your tax implication.
Yes, that's a critical part of that upfront conversation, Mike. And so it's part of, the collaboration and building that trust, right? If we have that conversation and strategize with them on what their intention is versus just try to jam a cost seg study down them, that's how you build that relationship of trust. They see, okay, these guys are here to help me succeed in the long term. They're not just trying to sell me a product. But that is a critical part of that initial conversation we have.
And those studies are done up front before any commitment is made on behalf of the client.
Well, what we do is the estimate of benefit. Okay. So we'll analyze their property, analyze their strategy of how long they're going to hold it, and we say, okay, based on what you're talking about, here is the benefit that we see you generating through doing a cost segregation study, right? And then they can say, okay, yeah, this is worth the $3,000 fee or the $4,000 fee to do the study, based on that benefit they're going to get.
And have you seen, there obviously we've had conversations here on the show about some of the administration's strategies without getting political, right? Just kind of, hey, this is kind of the overall scope of things,
right?
But are you seeing things potentially changing within the new administration on the tax laws affecting cost segregation?
Well, we're starting to hear the conversations come up.
Okay.
So, President Trump has alluded to bonus depreciation, which is a big part of cost segregation and the benefit generated. Speaker Johnson has also mentioned it. So it's starting to come up in conversations. And this is just Mark Santiago speaking here, so this isn't
Yeah.
authoritative in any way, but if you look at interest rates are high relative to how they've been in historically in the last 5 to 10 years. I think those are going to stay high, and so you need things like cost segregation, these tax benefits that encourage investment in the economy, right?
Right.
I think that you're going to see bonus depreciation come back, which is going to fuel some growth in terms of investors saying, okay, interest rates are still high, but I can go still generate a great ROI on this project because of cost segregation. So I think bonus depreciation is going to come back, and we'll see a fueling of the economy through that. But that's my view.
So if you have a CPA, and I know that you've talked to them, I've talked to them, if you have a CPA that is kind of, I don't want to say negative towards these kind of products and services, but they're not forward thinking, let's say that. How does a client stay up to date with these changes if they're not getting the guidance from the advisors that they're working with?
Yeah. Well, that's where I think networks like you've created, Mike, your company, others like me that are putting content out there. Um, I would say to the client or a building owner or someone that's looking to invest and get the right guidance, inform yourself, get involved in some of these circles where people are talking about strategies and what is available. A lot of times we don't take advantage of these super beneficial strategies because we don't know they exist.
Right.
So we got to inform ourselves. We got to be willing to put ourselves out there, become part of these circles. You and I, Mike, we reached out to each other on LinkedIn, and now we're having this great conversation. So we
Yep.
kind of put ourselves out there and we make ourselves aware. And then if you have a CPA that's just wanting to fill out your tax return and not strategize with you, I would say, hey, there's a lot of really good CPAs that are great strategists that would love your business and help you save a lot of money and really prosper more. So
Yep.
those
And
are
I would take it, and this is one of the things that I push back on CPAs is that I'm not looking to have people fire their CPAs,
no,
but if their CPAs are not, I mean, and it's okay if they don't want to do these things. Understanding that operating in a silo is no longer the way for growth. We have to start building teams. And if a CPA doesn't want to do cost segregation, great. Then find somebody that you can partner with that creates that value that's in alignment with you as a CPA to do that for your client. And I
yeah,
remember back in the network marketing days, the whole analogy was if you don't have time, find somebody with time. If you don't have the skill, find somebody with skill, and on and on and on. So find somebody, get a strategic partnership, create these synergies, and create more value for your clients.
yeah. And I would just add that's really good insight, Mike. And I would just add to any of the CPAs that are watching this, let us help you, right? Let us expand your practice and make you more sticky to your clients. This is a
Yep.
service that you will benefit from by taking care of your clients. And if you don't feel comfortable, we offer free CPE courses. We'll come in and teach your whole office the benefits of a cost segregation strategy. And let's network, let's work together and help each other.
Well, I love it. Mark, thanks again for breaking down cost segregation in a way for me. It actually makes sense, and it helps that I'm actually asking the question. So that's awesome. If you are a property owner, investor, CPA looking to create more value, like we talked about for your clients, don't ignore this. Please reach out to Mark. His contact information will be below. Find somebody, if not Mark, find somebody that can do this. There could be real money on the table for your clients that you can create that retention, increase client referrals, and we can go through the data in another call. But if you found this helpful, make sure to hit like, subscribe, put your comments below, questions, whatever the case may be. Mark, thank you for your time.
Mike, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Bye.
See ya.